Former talk show host Sally Jessy Raphael and NewsNation correspondent-at-large Geraldo Rivera also both tweeted about how important Donahue was for their careers. They both join me now to remember him. Geraldo, you said today he was the most important talk show host ever. Why?
Well, he invented the genre, as you correctly point out, and as the obituaries are making clear. He was the first one, I think, to recognize that the home audience, the audience at home during the day, the caregivers, the homemakers, were interested in the world, that they had very serious notions.
And not mindless stuff, interesting, meaty stuff.
The mindless, the fun stuff also, as your very entertaining montage of Donahue memories makes clear. But there were issues, civil rights, women's rights, consumer protection. Interviews with JFK, with Malcolm X. For goodness sake, Donahue really was, that person who brought that to the home audience.
Sally, Phil was also the first host to incorporate the live audience, using audience members to actually ask questions, or he would turn and say to them, "What do you think?" and put the microphone in their face.
He did more than that. He had phone calls. At the beginning, in the 60s and the 70s, he'd say, "Is the caller on?" And then he went into the audience. The thing about him was he liked women. And that was at a time when there weren't many men that we thought liked us.
Okay. But that also, listen, the audience can feel it. He liked them. He liked talking with them. He was a natural.
He was indeed a natural, but Geraldo is completely right. A, he invented daytime, and B, he invented making the audience the show.
Yeah. Geraldo, nothing, it seems.
Hi, Sally, by the way.
Hi, Geraldo.
Reunion.
Good to see you, honey.
Really, nothing was off limits. We played a little bit of it in the montage there, but there was other stuff. It wasn't just talking about AIDS when nobody would. He showed a live birth on television. He showed a live abortion on television. He was the first Western journalist to go to Chernobyl after the nuclear meltdown and accident there in 1986, and he talked a lot about sex.
Well, I think that, first of all, let's take it from the fun stuff on. Sex and intimacy and sexual preference, sexuality, every aspect of it.
Right.
Anything you could imagine, anything that later went into...
You could see the audience looking embarrassed when he was talking about how do you turn into a lesbian after 20 years of marriage.
Or how do you sleep with 100 people in a week, or whatever, the topic was. Nothing was off limits, and he had a seriousness about him that in many ways mitigated the salacious nature of those controversial topics, whether the gender preferences or all the rest of that. He really was a pioneer, way, way out. In fact, I think that after Phil, then came Oprah, and Sally and me and Regis in that first cadre there, we were his acolytes in a sense. We were, we brought our own brand to it, of course, but for him, would not have had the freedom to talk about some of those things. And now, there has been a retreat as society has gotten a bit more, I think, conservative in some ways. I think that the Jerry Springer phenomenon and the burlesque aspect of it kind of obscured some of the breakthroughs. But there really was, and still is to a certain degree, a conversation where there is an assumption that the audience watching is intelligent, engaged, interested, relevant, and that there's an equality, there was a freedom that it gave everybody that was at home during the day, during the week, who had been isolated and cut off, gave them a kind of a conduit to the wide, wide world, thanks to Phil Donahue.